in, Dada. Come. Come on. Come on. Come and say hello. Come on, Bab. Come and say hello. Come on. You can see your paw. We can see your pawsy. He almost threw everything in. This is his tail, isn't it? Isn't it your tail? Isn't it your tail? Look, say hello to the people. Say hello to the people on the internet. Huh? Say hello to the people on the internet. Say hello to the people on the internet.
Hello. You are listening to the dulcet tones of your host, the strange connector, now made way less squeaky by the absence of cats. Today, we will not be staring at my empty desk. Today, we will be painting. Or rather, I will be painting, and you feel free to do whatever you want. Knit, paint, craft, journal, or just get on with your work. It's perfectly fine to just listen along and not even watch. I'm happy to keep you company. And I'm happy for you to keep me company. I will be creating my painting on Fuumuui 100% cotton watercolour paper. My first time trying this paper. And hopefully, watching me paint, you shall be able to make your own impression of what this paper looks like and acts like. And decide whether it's paper for you. I will also be telling you a little bit about the process behind this painting, because I don't want to just become an art materials review channel. There are plenty of those that do the job much better than I ever could. My goal with my channel is kind of multifaceted. One of the main reasons behind it, however, was that I'd like this place to be somewhere where I can experiment and share in the pleasures of experimentation with others. Like I've said previously, I am an artist by training, but I'm not a painter by training. So I'm very much trying things out. And as someone who trained as an artist, we were taught to only show our best work, our finished work, to the public. So it can be quite difficult to be vulnerable as an artist and to show that we are beginners in a new field. So for me, this channel is a place where I can do just that. Share my learning, my experimentation, my mistakes, and learn something from you. And maybe you can also learn something from my bungled experiments. And if not, they might just be fun. Okay, enough of that. Let's get on with it. Last week, I decided to paint a detail of an interior, starting out with a quick sketch in charcoal, just to kind of get used to the subject and individuate areas of contrast, like in the darkest values and the lightest values. I then did a quick painting with watercolours. I don't think I did an underdrawing for this. I just went in with a watercolour, or I did a very loose drawing in pencil. I wasn't so interested in doing an accurate painting because both the sketch in charcoal and this quick painting were to kind of figure out what I would do later. So my intention was to do a more considered painting at a later date. Because I wasn't going to be in that room for another week, I decided to take a photograph and to do some more experimentation. I then did a quick thumbnail sketch. I don't know if this can be called a thumbnail because it's pretty big, but the important factor is that it was meant to be a really, really quick thing. I did in literally like a minute, just to play a bit with composition and colour. So I decided what I would do in the painting. My goal was to create a painting with colours reminiscent of a Monet sunrise, just because I thought it would be quite funny to apply the colours of a beautiful Monet sunrise to a piece of ceiling and a light fitting. So it's a interior sunrise. I then went in and added the colours that I wanted to add onto the original painting that I'd done from life. But I did this at home at a later date. And I thought, why don't I film this? Because my favourite painting size is quarter imperial sheet, because I like to buy whole sheets, like a big sheet of ash paper, for example, when it's on sale, and then I'll cut it into quarter sheets. And that ends up being quite economical, actually, if you do that. But unfortunately, I realised that quarter sheets do not fit in my camera frame, and I don't have the space at the moment to kind of zoom out more. So I had a moment of genius, and I thought, why don't I get two things together? Why don't I create this painting and at the same time test the Fuumuui paper that I showed you in my art haul video? I was pretty interested in finding out what the Fuumuui paper looked like and behaved like, because so far it's the cheapest paper I have come across. As you'll see when I open it, it's actually a pad, but no matter. It cost me £10 for a slightly larger than A4 pad of 100% cotton paper. I paid £10, which, is 50p per sheet. Fantastic. Now, if you bought a large sheet of paper on sale, you might pay less than that. But, it's not as convenient. It's not as painting ready. So that's why people buy pads and blocks. And these pre-cut blocks are also very good for videos, as it turns out. I mean, often sheets of premium paper actually end up being cheaper because you can buy a big sheet when it's on sale, or you can buy maybe 10 sheets because they might have a discount for like a pack of 10 or something like that. And then you can cut them up yourself, or you can turn them into sketchbooks, etc. But what people like about pads is that they're ready, and blocks even more so. You don't have to stretch them, you don't have to do anything. So it's very convenient. And you can carry them with you if you want. It's very easy. Anyway, this Fuumuui pad was very, very cheap. So here I am, opening the pad, and here is where I noticed that it's actually a pad and not a block. The paper is 300 GSM, 100% cotton, it's cold pressed, it's got a sturdy cardboard backing. Some of these blocks and pads have a slightly thinner cardboard backing. And I like it when they have a thicker cardboard backing because I can repurpose the card at the end. Yeah, it's firmly attached. The paper texture, I think I'm trying to show you the paper texture here, reminds me a lot of the texture of another Chinese paper brand that I like, that I use as one of my main painting brands for when I'm not doing something like that I'm going to try and sell, or something that's not precious, but something that I kind of want to do well. And that paper is called Leyton. I'll show it to you later on. And I think the two brands, probably Fuumuui and Leyton, I have a suspicion that it might be the same paper. And if that's the case, Fuumuui is actually cheaper at the moment than Leyton. But Leyton is still quite cheap. In fact, it's cheaper than Baohong, it's cheaper than Meeden. And it's really good paper. The only thing that I would say about these two papers is that the texture of the paper has a bit of regularity about it, and also it has a direction about it. In the case of this pad, it's a horizontal kind of texture. You'll see later what I mean. Here I started doing a drawing, and I decided to kind of like be a bit more precise with it. I'm using a square to make semi-straight lines. You might think that I'm measuring everything exactly, but I'm not. I am just kind of eyeballing things, and also I'm moving things around. So I've changed the dimensions of the column. I've moved the lights in the ceiling. I've moved a bunch of things. There's more ceiling here than in the picture. So I'm kind of doing a composite between my quick sketches from life, the photograph, and imagination. Here I'm putting some bulldog clips to keep things more in place. It's not really going to work, as you'll see, but it does help. And this is something that I learned from a YouTuber called Becca Hilburn, who's a comic book artist, whose YouTube channel I heartily recommend. It's full of amazing tips. So I started by wetting the paper, and I wet it quite a lot because this kind of shows how the paper behaves. And I did a wash of this kind of pinkish colour, which is actually Daniel Smith's Queen Rose from the split primary mixing set that you see on the left. On the previous painting that I'd done, the quick painting from life, I had chosen not to do a lot of mixing, to do mainly glazing instead, because I wanted the colours to look a little bit unnatural, to have that kind of glow about them. And here on the other hand, I thought I would tone the colours down a little bit, make them a bit duller. So I did do a little bit of mixing. Here I am lifting out some of the pink, and the reason I chose to do that instead of leaving the area dry when I wetted the paper and I added the pink is because I wanted a little bit of the pink to show through. So I didn't want it to be just white, and you'll see later on I liked the yellow and the pink interacting, and I like to do that by lifting it out. So I like to put down the paint and then lifting it out, and it leaves a kind of not blotchy, I don't know what the word is, but it's not as it would be if it was all white or if it was all painted. So it comes out a bit uneven. So that creates more of the sense of a light. And then I went in with more Queen Rose. And unfortunately, I messed up. Here you can see that big blotch in the middle on the column, because I hesitated. I decided I was going to change brushes, then I decided I wasn't going to change brushes, and I waited a little bit too long and things got really blotchy. So there's a nice stripe down the middle and a blotch on the column, but no matter, I thought to myself, because I'm going to go over it with another wash. So sometimes if there's a blotch, it doesn't matter, you can fix it later. Unfortunately, in this case, it didn't get fixed later, but that's okay. Then I decided to go in with some ultramarine, like I did on my test painting, the one I did from life, and then I added some colour to at home. So here I'm going in adding shadows. So these are all the shadows, the shadow areas in the photograph and in my drawing. So this painting is a composite of my drawing, my other painting, a bit of rearranging of things, shorten the column a bit, etc., etc. But I'm doing the same thing that I did on the other painting here. I'm adding ultramarine to all the shadow areas. I don't think I showed this, but you can see that on this light there's an area where there's less colour as well. And unfortunately I think I did that accidentally off screen, out of the frame, but I did lift a bit of the pink with a brush. And here I'm doing the same thing, so I like to put down some paint and then immediately lift it, and that kind of blends it in and leaves a bit of a ghost of the paint behind, so you get a bit of staining but not too much. So I like doing that a lot. It's less harsh than just having the white. So I did a bit more adding shadows with the ultramarine again. Sometimes I use my finger for lifting. When it's just a matter of kind of lightening the colour and leaving the staining behind. So here I'm going in and adding more shadows. I'm kind of going from larger to smaller. I'm kind of adding in things that I might not have spotted, darkening things a bit. Here I'm adding some shadows, and I'm doing this by dry brushing, mainly dry brushing. And that's actually something that you can do if you want to kind of gradually add in some details and you want them to have a bit of a texture to them. And I wanted these shadows to be a little bit textured because the column has a texture to it. It's a concrete column. And here I'm coming in with a wash that is a mixture of QOR Phthalo Turquoise and Daniel Smith Hansa Yellow Light, which is also the yellow in the light, in the light in the ceiling in my painting. So I wanted to use the same paints and have a very limited palette. And here I'm wiping the sides. It's very important to do because sometimes the water that's on the tape can, as the painting dries, the tape stays wet because it's less permeable. And then the paint that's on the tape will flow into the painting and create cauliflowers. So you want to watch out. So here I did something really stupid. I didn't realise that the column extended out to there, and I painted on top of it, so I had to wipe it off. But it worked in the end. So then I decided to add a bit of shadow, both to darken the value at the top of the column because it's against the ceiling and it was darker, and to kind of unify the column with the ceiling a little bit more. And I stopped, you may have noticed that I stop where the light fitting is. So I go from, it's actually a graded wash. It's not very noticeable, but it's a graded wash. But I still stop, even though it's water at the bottom, I stop there when I reach the light fitting because I don't want the water to create a halo. Here I'm drying it out, and unfortunately I didn't wait for long enough, so I pushed the paint around a little bit and you can still see the blotch from the pink, but no matter. And here I'm dry brushing some more shadow, so it's kind of mid-tone shadow, and I'm doing that with the Phthalo Turquoise because I want a bit of the paints to be everywhere. And I'm also adding in the Phthalo Turquoise to this light fitting, which is like a slightly different colour from the column. So it's a similar value, but a different colour in the photograph. So I'm kind of adding the Phthalo Turquoise to everything. And in doing so, I realised that as opposed to the previous photograph that had a more unnatural colour, the ultramarine is not as noticeable. There wasn't as much of a contrast as there had been with a previous painting that I did. I decided, as you'll see later, to add some darker colour. But first I tried darkening the background by adding more of that wash. I added, I think, a bit more yellow, and maybe I added a bit of of Queen Rose to it to dull it a bit as well. Make it darker, dull it a bit. So it's actually a wash of like a mix of 3 colors. And here I'm adding more yellow. And as you can see, I'm doing it unevenly, deliberately. And then I'm mopping it up. So I was making stripes because I want the light fitting to kind of be uneven. And as I was saying, I thought there wasn't enough contrast between values. So I decided to darken everything. And rather than just have the ultramarine for shadows, I created a mix of everything. So I think it's, if I remember correctly, you can see on the left, I made this dark color by mixing some of the Queen Rose, some of the yellow, some of the ultramarine, and maybe a little bit of the Phthalo Turquoise. So it's all of those colors. And I created this kind of darker hue. Yeah, that's kind of got a bit of a purpley undertone maybe. So there's quite a lot of ultramarine in there. I think it might have been just the ultramarine, in fact, the yellow and the Queen Rose. You'll notice I'm not putting it absolutely everywhere. I'm leaving some areas lighter. And I'm using this as my darkest value. And I think this was it. Yep. So here I am taking off the bulldog clips. Again, this is something that I learned from watching Becca Hilburn's videos. The trick with the bulldog clips and using this kind of, as a board, using these very light Corex sheets. I recommend her videos. She does a lot of watercolor and art supplies testing. She's very thorough. She's very experienced. She's also got a comic that she's selling. She's got a coloring book, lots of fun stuff for you to purchase. Yeah, just go and check her out because she puts lots and lots and lots of work in her channel. And I think she deserves a bit of a boost because it's an invaluable resource for lots of people. Then I decided that maybe I should do some testing on the paper for you. And so I took another sheet out and I took out my very favorite watercolors for testing. These are Kokuyo Camlin Artist Watercolours. I recommend them. They are an Indian brand. You'll have to order them from India, but they're so worth the money. They're great. I use them to practice or to test things out. And this is the 12 tube set, and I would recommend that 12 tube set over other sets. So what I've been doing here is I have tried to kind of fade out the colors, because that's how I usually can tell what the paper can do for me. I'm not doing a really good job of it. And here I'm doing a wash, a flat wash, because I find that when paper is not 100% cotton, it'll tend to do weird blotchy things when you try and do a wash. And here I'm showing you on this pad that is supposed to be 100% cotton, but that behaves really, really weirdly, so I suspect it isn't. So if I do a wash on here, you'll see, instead of a flat wash, I'll get blotchy bits when it dries. When I'm trying to fade the colors out, the color doesn't really disperse. It kind of stops. It creates kind of a hard line, as you can see. And then here I'm trying to do a wash, starting with slightly thicker paint at the top. And here's some more fading. I didn't know what I was doing really, but I was just trying a bunch of things. And you can see this wash has dried out now, and it's very even. And then I put in some paint into the wet to see how it would flow, how it would disperse into the water. So wet on wet. I wet a square of paper, and this is the paper that I don't really like, and I put the paint in and I let it flow down like I did with the Fuumuui paper to see how the papers behave. And I don't know if you can see, but on the Fuumuui paper you can see the texture of the paper, so you can see that the paint kind of went down following the texture of the paper a little bit. So here I'm trying to do that wash from the kind of milky consistency paint down to slightly more, it's not really a graded wash, but it was trying to be a flat wash, but I kind of made it kind of like a bit thicker at the top. And here I'm doing a flatter wash, I think. I don't know what I was doing. Washes. But you can already see that the one on the Otway paper, which is Amazon paper, is blotchy, whereas the one on the Fuumuui paper isn't. So here, what you just saw me show is a bunch of different types of paper. So I was comparing it with the potentate paper, and the texture is definitely different. And then I compared it to the Leyton paper block, and I suspect it's the same paper, and if so, it's very good paper. Here I'm doing some lifting, and as you can see, no problem at all. It lifts really well. Very happy. I haven't seen a lot of testing done on this paper, so if you want me to do anything in particular, let me know, because I don't really know where to begin with testing paper, really. And that's what I've shown you is kind of what I do and how I tell that the paper is a bit weird, if it's a bit weird. It's not the officially approved, officially sanctioned way of doing these tests. So if you want me to try anything in particular, let me know in the comments, please, and I will. I've ordered another block of this paper, so I'll happily do a test for you. I can compare it to other paper, just let me know in the comments. And otherwise, I can direct you to other channels as well, where there's lots of really, really good paper comparisons. But as I said, I have not seen a lot of comparing of this paper and testing out this paper. There are a lot of videos about Fuumuui brushes, but not about the paper. And I think that this paper is actually quite good. For me, the only bad thing about this paper is the texture, and that's it. I prefer the texture of other papers. I prefer the texture of Ash. I prefer the texture of Fabriano. I prefer the texture of Saunders Waterford. I prefer the texture of Bao Hong. But I'm perfectly happy with this paper, and at £10 for this size, it's an absolute steal. So grab yourself some. So that's it from me. I have been your host, the Strange Connector, and I will now leave you with a meow from our Feline Overlords, who care not a bit about paper nor art supplies. They care very much, however, about wet food and kibble. Bye bye.